welcome you all to this seminar on design and pursuit of excellence within the pressures of technology, social media, and overlapping life patterns. I'm your moderator, Architect Razayasan. Our first panelist is a UK-based architect Gurmani Centre. She's Director and Deputy Chairman of Donald Insel Associates. She is an accredited conservation architect with 20 years experience of working with listed buildings. Architect Tanveer's primary interest lies in creating awareness for the built heritage. I'd like to invite Architect Tanveer to start.
So, good morning. Thank you all for coming. And thank you, Maria, for asking me to join you today and to be part of the panel and to have the opportunity to design a rather wonderful building as part of the open festival. I was told to talk for 10 minutes and in 10 minutes tell you about what I do and my practice. So last night I desperately cut my talk short, which was a 30-minute conversation. So, excuse me, you may have more slides than I would have put in a 10-minute presentation, but whatever. So, I would like to start by telling you where I work and a little bit about the practice, which is slightly different from the architectural practices we have in Pakistan. So, if I could have my first slide, please. Right. Yeah, we're going to turn off. Maybe the other one. So I'm a deputy chair of a firm of architects called Donald Insel Associates. It's a firm of architects which works almost exclusively in the heritage environment. And in England, this means working with listed buildings or conservation areas. There are 150 of us, and we are spread across 8 branches in England, and we are 100% employee owned. That means the practice is owned by its employees, and profits are shared. We are, as you see, a team which includes architects, historians, building surveyors, heritage advisors, and of course, project managers. And nobody ever retires from Donald Insel. So we continue to keep people who leave as consultants, which is really what makes us unique, because buildings in England come back to us. So you look after a building, it goes away, it comes back, but somebody else buys it. So our knowledge of all buildings is actually unique, which is why you have people from sort of multi-generational people who actually set up the practice. If I can have the next one. So the practice was set up by Donald Insel, and you can see Donald is 96 this year, it was his birthday yesterday. And he set up the practice in the 50s as a reaction against all the new buildings that were being built up after the war, and to the loss, as a result, much of England was being lost to redevelopment. And his philosophy, which remains the core philosophy of our practice, is to enable historic buildings and places to survive and to continue to be inhabited and enjoyed. If I have the next slide, please. And these are sometimes for over centuries. This is the 16th century Elizabethan house, which we have recently restored, and which continues to work as a family house. Simona sitting next to you in the front row, he of course comes from Italy, where they do this all the time. But in England, it's also the case. And if I can have the next slide, please. So there are 2 aspects of conservation which we deliver. The conservation work itself, which is the technical work of preserving the building. And we also regenerate them, which means that you have to update the building so that it is usable for contemporary existence. And it's not always that the building we regenerate fulfill the function for which it was originally constructed. What you have here is the old War Office on Whitechapel, which is where Winston Churchill sort of led, so-called, the Second World War. And it is now being turned into a hotel and a private apartment. And can we have the next one, please? And sometimes the buildings that we update remain to fulfill the functions for which they were designed. And these are Bath Spas in the city of Bath. This is an 18th century building, and it continues to work as a spa. It has been updated with sort of glass doors and heated swimming pools and so on. But it survived more or less in the form that it was usually designed. So our portfolio, if I can have the next one, please. So our portfolio building is sort of varied. We work in gardens. Lost our slide. So we work, we restore landscapes, and we work with landscape designers and horticulturists, and of course our team as conservation architects. Can I have the next one, please? And we regenerate we obviously work with conservatories and garden themes, and this is the Temperate House at Kew, which was recently restored and has won many awards. And what we did at Kew was to make the building restore it, but to also make it more energy efficient. And I have the next one, please. And we restore historic interior. This is the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and this meeting room has been updated to enable contemporary use of a meeting room and remote meetings to be conducted from here. We put in lighting, heating, acoustics, updated the floor, but also restored the paintings, much of which were lost, and included various other equipment they wanted to make their lives. Can I have the next one, please? We also work in government buildings, and this is the Palace of Westminster, where we are involved in the current restoration and renewal project of the building. And on the right, you can see the scale at which we work. So we are updating the building to make it more usable, but we also have knowledge to restore fine detail. And on the right, you can see the stone being cut out and replaced. So within our team, we have people who are passionate about materials, so they know a lot about stone, and stone itself is an interesting but varied material to use. You have to know where it was quarried, what type it was, because every stone behaves differently, and this is the sort of knowledge we know and have and hold within our team. You also have to protect it, you have to bed it correctly, and all the other issues that go with just replacing a piece of stone with a new one. It's not as simple as going out shopping, buying the stone and sticking it in. And we work, of course, with special craftsmen. Can I have the next one? And we do also the Flutter Palaces. Next one, this is Hampton Court. Next one, please. And museums, and this is the British Museum, where we have just conducted a condition survey and a thermal survey to enable the building to establish its heat and energy losses and to improve its use of energy. The next one. There should have been a new building here, which is, we also put new buildings in historic environments, always in historic environments. We don't do sort of commercial new builds. So how do we do this? And what I wanted to do is to give you a case study of one building, which is this building. And it is an old church that was built in 1825 under the Regency period to the design of the architect John Peter Daring Gandhi. And it had after that was really fallen into disuse, and in a very poor condition. It was leaking, and the image on the left, you can see that the church was patched up, poor condition, roof leaking, front facade falling apart, and on the right is the roof and the front after it had been restored. The building was built in 1825, the exterior, and in the middle, towards the end of the toward the end of the 19th century, it was updated by another architect called Arthur Bloomfield, who really redid the interior. Can I have the next slide? And so the building its important significance is both its external shell, but also its interior Romanesque interiors of a different time. You can see the elevation as we saw it in poor condition. It sits on North Audley Street, which is one of London's the fashionable streets just off Oxford Street. And the estate that owns it, Gurmani Estate, wanted to improve it because it was an eyesore, and they wanted to change its use so that it would align with all the other uses on the building. And the other uses on the building were being regenerated for hospitality. So the restaurants and sort of fancy shops and things, they come off Oxford Street. So you shop in Oxford Street and you come and eat in North Audley Street. So this ex-church, because it was reconstituted, was being updated, and they wanted it to be updated for restaurant and retail, but they really didn't have a retail person in hand to actually take over the building. So our brief was, we'll have to make it so that it's flexible, so anybody who comes in can use it. We don't know if a restaurant, a shop, and this is a church. And it's a Grade 1 listed church, which is the highest kind of listed. So if you can have the next one, please. And this is the interior. It's not too bad, but actually needed a lot of work because it was very dirty and the windows leaked and so on and so forth. Can I have the next one? So where do you start with it? And you start by looking at the fabric itself and how you can make the building watertight. And these are very detailed surveys of the stonework, its condition, why it was disintegrating at the speed that it was, and how we could stop this disintegration from happening. And this really is a lot of work. And the next one. And then you start detailing areas where you have the major loss. And in this case, it was the roof of the cupola of the steeple. And one of the problems was that the stonework was of a very low quality and it was degrading. So can we go to the next one? So it was a question of, in this case, we decided that we were not going to replace the roof. We simply covered it with lead, and we created the details in lead, but we also reclad the main nave with tiles and provided ventilators and access ladders and so on. So the building could be maintained because maintenance is the core of restoration. Can we have the next one? And the church facade, after it was looked after and redone, looked from what it was in the left to what it was on the right. Can you do the next one, please? And for the interior, of course, it's more complicated because you have to understand where your areas of opportunity are. So every building has a core significance, so areas which you cannot touch and should not touch or really restored, and then areas which are less significant, but you can add or change. And this is essential. You have to do this before you can add new uses. Can we have the next one? But in the case of St. Mark's, we also have to provide the client with a vision. And this was a vision we didn't know it was a restaurant or a shop, so we have a shop in this case, and then the next one. And a restaurant if they wanted on the upper floor. But these are just sort of images. The church itself has very, very fine details, and on the right hand, a detail of the stained glass window and a possible restaurant. Can we do the next one, please? Servicing in this case was basically the skill that unlocked it, and we worked very hard to find a way of putting in all our ducts and all our wires and so on, so that anybody who came in could actually pick up the services wherever they wanted, which made it more flexible. Can I have the next one? And actually, it was taken by a community restaurant called Mercato Metropolitano, used by Italians. And what they wanted to do is that they had, it was just before COVID hit, there was no taker. Grosvenor Estate was getting the only people who came in. And they wanted to put pizza ovens in a grade 1 listed church. So it was quite a difficult challenge, but because we are so clever at what we do, they could already put in place, so they could just plug and play. And what they did is that they made little stores of different people who were, some were selling ice cream, some were selling pizza, some were selling pasta, and so on. So this is the next one. And this is how it was regenerated. So it was a church with all the different stores in the galleries and the aisles. And in the nave was the main sitting area and a bar and the altar, which is quite amusing. But it is now one of the more popular. Can I have the next one, please? Places. But of course, there is a skill that goes into it, and these are areas that were restored. This is a painting, a canvas painting that was very carefully put back after water damage. Can I have the next one? And the side chapels, which were also restored. This is in the process of being restored. Next one, please. And so the building was regenerated as a community kitchen, and it continues to survive and is very, very popular. There are huge queues, and you must go and see it if you're in London. Thank you.
Want the next one? We want the next 20 minutes. Let your time showing.
Thank you, architect Abhiras. There was a very good watching the slideshow. Our next panelist is from Italy, architect Simone. He graduated from IMAB Venice, the recipient of 2013 award. Practice focuses on sustainable design, encompassing a combination of high quality design with architects. Guys, I will request you to sit down so that the next presentation can start.
While we're waiting for a slideshow, can you set the full screen mode, please? Okay. Okay, so thank you very much, Maria, for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here. It's my first time in Pakistan. Amazing experience, and first of all, I want to say that I am a privilege to be a jury member of this event, which allows me to learn more about the state of art and of design in Pakistan. I recognize the cultural capacity, and the best project presented for search for a balance between global and local cultures. And this seems to me that it's more interesting trait of this work in general of the world. So I'm very grateful for this because it was above all learning the alternative for me. So now scrolling through some images of our professional activity of my firm and one of the co-founders, Thomas Shaffi. We are based in Venice, but we work mainly abroad for foundations, NGOs, global associations, especially in the global south, sub-Saharan area of Africa, but also Middle East as well. Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on. The last 15 years, society has worked mainly on the boundaries of settlements. I refer to physical boundaries, but also social boundaries as well. But what I can say, I refer to the boundaries of borders between inclusion and exclusion. And so this condition has allowed us to observe human settlements from a peripheral point of view. We consider this a condition as an opportunity because sometimes you have to take 2 steps back to focus on an object or a phenomenon. We are coming out from a COVID pandemic, and what I have learned about this is I want to share with you this quote of Maria Teresa Basson. She was the curator of the pavilion, Philippines pavilion, and the 2019 pavilion in Venice Art Biennale. And she says, actually, we are buoyed by the seeming dissolutions of order, the unprecedented speed of time, and a mobility across places never before experienced. Yet we space but breeds of displacement, discrimination, and disasters. Nature is our great leveler, and this is really important. Emergence this atmosphere of shared vulnerability. And what does this condition of shared vulnerability give us? I think that it gives us the urgent need to move from the center and explore the boundaries. On one hand, to invest unreservedly in scientific and technological research to go beyond the current sustainable development paradigms. On the other hand, adopt a responsible model for reducing consumption and pursuing an idea of appropriateness. So, the daily relationship with places, materials, and meaning. On this way, our center can return to be a place for community, relationships, sharing of common goods. So, on the boundaries, we have tried to realize projects conceived as commons. Considering that in a popular sense of a common good is a specific resource shared by all the members of a given community. So we have considered the boundaries as land of possible encounters rather than the limits of exclusion. We have tried to move the line further beyond the heart. Turning the exclusion and sustainable development, we consider it common good as a whole, and taking care of places. So, taking care has become a statement for our firm. It gives us a vision of architecture in the service of community. It seeks to show how architecture makes a difference when it takes care of individuals, communities, spaces and places, principles and resources. Architecture concentrated on society can curb the marginalization and exclusion and become a driving force for new vision, a powerful medium for communicating, an instrument through which many boundaries can claim rights, progress, opportunity and inclusion. With our work, we try to offer tangible proof of how architecture with its specific tools can help spread and make effective the principles of sociality, participation, healthcare, integration and legality, everywhere and on any scale of architecture, scale of human design. By embodying these principles, architecture can, in this millennium, we have to engage with and find answers in the challenge that the city and environment present not only to architects, but all the most responsible designers of our future. So, our work as a responsible designer stems from a specific idea of architecture as a collective task, a collective effort in which we have to evolve our approaches, particularly attentive to places and communities, adopting participatory processes. The architecture that I'm showing in these slides was born from these approaches. often working with limited resources, but I hope reaching ideas, and it has grown through a constant exchanges with our practice, in the process of construction of meaning which seeks to establish common categories such as belonging, identity, sharing, and understanding. This idea of architecture does not promise a new theory. Rather, it is constructed as a complex practice conducted through cooperation with numerous social, cultural organizations active in border areas, but with the local communities as well. In this complex and often disaggregated setting, architecture has to reconstruct its own role as a common understanding appropriately disseminated and shared, capable of caring the places and developing human capital in every community. The boundary is not just a physical space, it's also a mental space, namely the cultural margins in which the essential idea of housing is to be found. Architecture will continue to act as an instrument of resistance, only if it is able to cope with the marginalization and build new contexts in which this part of society identifies itself and can organize the rules by which it lives. It will have to deal with many challenges, but participatory architecture, intelligent, creative, and effective, caring and responsible will certainly succeed in undermining the status quo, conceiving and building better places. The need to reconsider architecture and more generally design as a collective work capable of taking care of common goods at the service of community emerges strongly. So the process of generating and implementing an inclusive project must therefore be structured in such a way as to involve designers, institutions, in the construction of common goods capable of transcending the meritative aesthetics of architectural objects. It's also a research about sustainability, but it's also a research about beauty. I know that beauty is a tricky word. Architects normally don't talk about beauty, because beauty is something that you every time, every day you try to achieve, but you're not really there. But it's definitely part of the process, because bringing beauty is just to communicate that you are taking care of people, taking care of communities. So it is a question of empathy with the physical and social context that constitutes the true foundation of design, in balance between environmental impact of resources, ambition and respect for local cultures. You probably know this, we saw the 17 global goals for sustainable development, very important UN document. We daily deal with this document. And what can I say? Global goals tackle the question of sustainability in a rational, technical way, Anglo-Saxon approach. But I can say that maybe something is missing. And I dare to say that design and beauty as a healing process could be considered as the 18th goal. So, this means that what can we say about beauty? Beauty in our profession is certainly the purpose, but what matters in the process is the process that produces. Because as Oscar B. Meyer said, architecture is a pretext. Important in life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our last panelist is architect Yahya Jan, who actually needs no introduction. He's the president and design director of LUMS. He has a 30-year of global experience. He leads his design efforts from Dubai. He's going to be joining us via Zoom. Reading about him, following him, he believes in the ability to integrate design to transform the built environment. I'll hand over the mic to architect रहे जाएं. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, look, first of all, it's an honor to be included in your proceedings, and really excited to be here. And also listening to the presentations this morning. I think one thing that always inspires me is that my profession of architecture is actually incredibly diverse, and I truly believe in the power of design with a capital D. I believe has the potential to do a lot of good on this planet, not just in the design of architecture, but also design of cities, urbanism, and so on. The title of my kind of short talk is To Dream and to Do. And it's a kind of a personal reflection. I truly believe that as designers, if we have the audacity to dream things in our lives and for those around us that might seem impossible, and if we have the discipline to do it, to work through the steps needed, it's quite amazing what one can achieve. And I think we saw some of that in the first two talks. My own career has been varied. Lived in the US for a while, of course grew up in Karachi, then moved to the US, was there for 15 years, and then Dubai for 27 years. So my own career has evolved in its own way. What interests me is the form of cities and the challenge of density. How do we embrace urbanism, galloping urbanism in our part of the world? How do we tackle that through sustainability, which means density, and how do we do density in a kind of a thoughtful way? And having lived in the Middle East now for 27 years, I've reflected on this, because many of the cities here, such as Dubai and others, are really almost a tabula rasa. They started out almost like towns and have grown up very quickly with high density environments. And I would say the jury is out. I think we all need to reflect on how well that's done, how well are our cities made for people, for shared public space, how well do we manage horizontal movement, especially highways, how do we manage that and weave it into our cities such that our cities are still for people and not for cars. So there are a lot of challenges like that. I'll just show a few quick slides, and I think it would be a kind of an interesting counterpoint to some of the other presentations. So give me 30 seconds to try and share. Let me see if I can get this on the screen here. Sorry, I'm not successful on sharing. So I'll just talk for a few more minutes. I think maybe that's more meaningful rather than showing buildings. You can always look at buildings at some other time. So in a way, I think we all have a decision to make. the key decision for us as architects and designers is, one of the questions I ask myself is, why do we get out of bed in the morning? Is it money, ambition, quest for discovery, research? Certainly for me, it's never been money. It's always been to explore and look for solutions. My purpose really as a designer is to look for that kind of golden intersection between art and science. How can I combine in my own work technology and yet humanity, so that our buildings are really for people, but of course, because they tend to be vertical and dense, which is the world I'm in, how do we make that work such that it's meaningful? How the building meets the public realm? How can the public realm be brought vertically up into the towers, which we do through the introduction of gardens and quasi-shared spaces in our towers. And that's really been my passion. And so I would say that the role of the architect and the architect and the engineer, in my mind, are actually fused in one singular role. I don't see it as two separate roles, which was traditionally the role of the builder. The builder was both an engineer and an architect. I think that's a very exciting future for our industry, if we can truly embrace it and if we can avoid what I call unnecessary over-specialization. So what we need is Renaissance men and women in our profession, those who can who read literature, who are interested in the humanities, who are comfortable with technology and are extremely creative and artistic. These are the kind of people that will challenge some of our paradigms of urbanism and so on, come up with possibly unique solutions that could be quite exciting. And one of the things I do say to people in our group in Dubai and elsewhere is that we should be selfish and we should be selfless. So we should be selfish as individuals and professionals, designers, by pushing for our own individual growth. We should be learning and we should be selfishly making ourselves better and better, stronger as designers. And then we should be selfless in how we share that knowledge and how we can play a role in the future development of, certainly in my case, future development of urbanism. So I will leave it at that. Thank you so much. And Maria, thank you so much for including me in this talk. Yeah, thank you.
To invite all of you guys, including architect Kaleem Siddiqui and Jazan sir, on stage so that we have a little discussion. Please. This can be. Before I head off to the audience, I would like to thank you all for sharing your practices and your work. And it's been very inspired. But I'm going to start off with an open source question or open-ended question. And I'm going to start off with one of your slides that quoted Maestro Oscarino's quote, which was architecture is 3 takes. Important is life. Now, I find a little discourse over there, and allow me to say that because Austin Eber was known for his fluency in design, their functionality, and human condition, prelude to his own abstract forms. Having said that, looking at your work now, and you're very eccentric someone, there's this unsaid pressure on the new generation of being there, producing projects that are like you said in slides. You have to look at how old buildings can be, but at the same time, there's a serious amount of pressure on the new generation of creating the architecture, so that what kind of advice would you give to the new generation, and how do you mix these two different approaches in architecture? And anyone can take it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm really happy to see that there are many young students of architecture, and what can I say? That you have to be really aware that architecture is somehow a violent act, because it changes the place for a long time, sometimes forever. So it is about the responsibility that you have. And I like to say that we have to consider ourselves as civil servants, not only as architects or practitioners or professionals. It means that we always have to be aware that we are at the service of places and communities. Because yes, we deal with forms, we deal with functions, but we deal with people, who will live in our architectures. So it is a long-time assumption of responsibility. It's not about designing a very nice architecture, taking photographs and then going away. Because what you live is there and it stays there.
Yes, agreed.
I completely agree with someone said that, absolutely right, and I also feel that we should step gently on this world. That I think architects also get trapped into the issue of ego. You said, and how do they make their impact? And I don't think we need to make an impact. I said we don't need to make an architects should not start with this premise that you have to create a masterpiece which is going to last forever, because it doesn't. And the buildings that survive are the buildings that are successful and they survive. I am particularly interested in the heritage environment because I think that historic landscapes carry with them embedded energy, embedded memory. They carry nostalgia, they carry our history, they carry our culture. And if you obliterate them completely and plant a new idea, well, then you are losing a lot of your background, of your collective experience. Somebody mentioned poetry, mentioned literature. And buildings like poetry, or old buildings like poetry, carry with them an understanding. So for me, new buildings are important. We have to put in new buildings, but I think we need to do them carefully. We need to design them carefully. And we don't need to design big bombastic structures. And we don't have to destroy the environment, both built and unbuilt, to put our new footprint on this world.
All right. Dasa, your comments on this?
I think enough has been.
All right. And then I
some other question, maybe some other
like
question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, I would talk a little about sustainability because I think what Simon as well as Yahya actually wanted to say is on how sustainable we as architects are building cities or buildings itself for has to be for the people. And I'll just take an example of Pakistan, where you can see everywhere buildings or development, urban developments are like not for the people, but rather for A-class people. We are a community here, I think it's about 10,000 architects in Pakistan. And Simon was surprised yesterday you were saying that with a population of about 230 million, we only have 10,000, while Italy has 120. 170. So that's statistics, and it actually reflects on how best we, a small group of 10,000, can actually have some impact. And even those from those 10,000, we are not actually getting to the real impact. It's very selective. So it's I think, the responsibility of our profession, of course, we are producing a lot of architects every year. So we need to, I think, rethink, redesign, and then rebuild for the greater number of the people whom we haven't, our profession hasn't touched as such. So sustainability and what Yai was also talking about, cities, buildings, whether they go vertical, horizontal. So I think, and being a member of the jury for AD Awards, I think the subjects should be such that they conform to certain objectives for a greater cause, I would say, for the built environment. Thank you.
Okay, this brings me to another question. When we talk about sustainability, and Matt has talked about it, Yahya Dan has talked about it, Simone, they talked about it, and first slides was a schooler from like the white, in a very very low class urban setup. You see, when we talk about sustainability, normal notion of sustainability is that it's all about environment and materiality. But we as architects tend to forget that sustainability has another fraction attached to it, which is the economy of scale or economics. And somehow the other, when we talk about the Massa city or any other, they've been extremely expensive in terms of getting the right built environment there. Don't you guys believe that it's about time that instead of individual thought process, we should work as a collective whole and deal with the suppliers as well as architects coming together and forming policies so that not only in terms of it helps the environment, the human condition, but also the cost of making those kind of projects is attainable. I'll start off with the answer.
Yeah, I'd like to elaborate on the sustainability issue that we've been talking about. I've pondered over this, and I think every century or every few decades we take up a topic and 20, 30 years we go and say, oh, we're going to have to poor, and now things like that, we're going into sustainability. I think this issue of sustainability is to me it's a bit exaggerated, and I may be cross-questioned on it in that sense of the word. But I think whatever your 17 goals were or whatever is something an architect should be doing anyway. We should have to be told about it. It's like we've gone out of the way, the wrong way, and everybody's trying to bring us back on track again. So all the elements that we've been seeing should do this in terms of materials, in terms of location, in terms of environment. I think it's part of an architect's service, and we basically have come from a life of too much good and excessive things, and maybe the good times sometimes go up and down, and when you're down, you start to say something. So I really question that sustainability is something that is inherent in the teaching and practice of architecture, and to try and bring it as a fashion or something is something that should be avoided. In that sense of the word, it's great, to see Simone's work in terms of going into these far lands, looking at it. We tend not to get into depth of anything. We just tend to look at glossy pictures, and I've seen this in Pakistan. It's a fairly different situation, but to me, even the young architects, all the architects themselves must just look at themselves. As you said, somebody said, reflect on yourself, and say, okay, why do we need the 17 piece formula? Is that the thing? And Simone added an 18th one, So you got to be human about it. I think basically you bring humanity back. Thank you.
Thank you. Yari-san, are you there?
Sorry.
No, why don't you go ahead and I'll come in after you. So go ahead.
Okay, io definitely agree with Nicholas because Massimo Cacciari, former mayor of Venice, he's also a very well-known philosopher in Italy, professor of aesthetics, renovation, school of architecture, used to say that architecture is sustainable, otherwise it is not. So when you talk about sustainable architecture, you assume that it's has to be also unsustainable architecture. That is nonsense. And I don't agree about what you said, that somehow the word sustainability has been overused and abused. Everything is sustainable now. So the multinational companies have their own sustainable protocols. McDonald's is sustainable, everything is sustainable. So if everything is sustainable, nothing is sustainable. But at the same time, I think that it is important that it has been, sustainability has become a common word. So it is important to give a correct meaning to that word. It is not only about environmental sustainability, it's about economic sustainability and social sustainability. So I prefer to say that sustainability means simplicity, because you deal with the environment, but you deal with all the resources, the human resources, and the economic resources that you find on the ground when you start with a project. And this is, I think it's important in our profession to be aware about that.
Yes, sir.
There's sometimes when I think of sustainability, I actually think of an African proverb which is commonly used. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think that's an interesting kind of thing to think about. The collective, a collective consciousness, not only for people, but for all life form, and then ultimately our planet. If we want to go far, we have to collectively agree on what our goals are. Sustainability implies preservation. So the question is, what do we want to preserve? What values do we have? What do we want to do? Now, I'm also acutely aware that architects and designers are not policy makers. So we should be always cognizant of that we are not, typically we are not politicians, we are not policy makers, but perhaps we can bend that arc. Perhaps we have the power to raise consciousness and to debate things in places like this. I think that's important. I'm a big believer in the power of innovation. I would argue that if our students who are just starting their careers, if we encourage them to think about innovation, which could mean studying history, it could mean embracing new technology, it could mean the social sciences. I think it's all of the above. I believe the new generation will do better than us. I'm hopeful that the new generation will come up with, really amazing solutions, especially for urbanism and the social stresses that it brings, and how do we but I think we're at a pivot point, both in terms of the environment, we're at a pivot point, and then in terms of technology with artificial intelligence and other, new horizons of technology that are on us. I think there will be a new world soon. And if we want to have a role in that, we'll have to be renaissance in our thinking, our actions.
Thank you. Kalita?
Coming back to sustainability, I think what I meant, and I think what Yahya also mentioned, probably what he meant was the equitable use of resources. I think let's give an example, like, again, what we've seen all over this country here is the use of water. If you just take water, the way we are using water, is it sustainable for a future generation? Or the use of agricultural land, where we're just going horizontal and you're making what you call as high security gated communities. Are these the correct use of our resources? So when we say sustainable design, it's all, it envelopes the whole environment, the built environment. And when it comes to built environment, it's just not agree with I just mentioned that it's just not the architects or the planners, but the engineers, as Yohan also mentioned. And I think it's a question of now having a built environment profession, which actually is the most important thing for sustainable development for everyone, not just a few section of the society. That's what I call sustainability for everyone, and how best you can provide the standard of living by equitable distribution of resources. And if you're just doing or giving a service or the resources for a certain segment of society, that's not sustainable. So that's what I meant.
I would like to ask the audience if they want to ask questions.
Thank you. I will be talking only in the context of Pakistan. Of course, we operate theoretically in a global context, but my remarks should be only seen in a local context. I'm particularly worried about this approach of lamenting over the fact that we have 10,000 architects and we need a country of maybe 220 or 230 million. We have to drive around our streets to find what these 10,000 have produced.
Yes.
And wouldn't we have been better off if we didn't have any? And I really think now, I really am moving more and more towards the fact that we should deregulate the design profession. Should we have so-called registered licensed architects? Licensed to do bloody what? You have to drive in the streets of the city. Pathetic architecture. I mean, it's a sad place in terms of every building has been built by a licensed architect in Islamabad. It is one of the saddest design statements on the planet that I have seen collectively. Yes, exceptions there are very good buildings by few of the architects who are also sitting here and elsewhere. But what are we producing? And this whole debate of sustainability is very contextual in a very narrow context. The debate that architects should really question themselves and go into a self-destruct mode is about power. Architects have to work and do work largely operate within the constraints of the power of this political power in the society, political, economic, financial power. And will they be, they cannot produce anything sustainable because people don't figure anywhere in their work. And by and large, of course I'm generalizing, but there are people who work for people. There are even architects, surprise, surprise, who work for people, but they are very few. What collectively architects work for power. Historically also this has been true, but there have been exceptions. But in Pakistan, the exceptions out of those 10,000, I can name 4 or 5 architects in the whole this 10,000 crowd. So we need the profession itself needs to go very seriously retrospectively think of what they have produced. Is it worth producing? And I am very happy if it's not sustainable. Because the sooner it disappears, the better it is for our survival as a species. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, but I would request to keep it short, Jake.
I have a question for Simon. You know, the work you've done and you showed was wonderful. It did tread lightly as it's done. So you said in the environment. And it's all basically for NGOs. And you said you go out of it to a room. I was just wondering how you keep the office flying.
Thank you.
With starvation. Now, it was a challenge. It was a challenge because okay, we had the opportunity to work with NGOs and foundations that recognize that the work of the architect, the designer, is not a pro bono. It's not only a pro bono. You do something, and you have to be paid for it. You have to be paid in a fair way. This means that you have to keep the cost very low. You have to be cost effective. Not only you have to be cost effective in your fees, and you have to be cost effective in all the process. That is fundamental. So it's a sort of process of reduction. But somehow it works. So I'm here.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You have another question? I think we'll just Shahid Sabs.
My name is Shahid Abdullah. I think we've covered a very large spectrum of our profession. And by the way, Yahya, when you said that you always question yourself that why do I wake up? My neighbor architect told me that because he has to go to the loo. Yes, I think that's a very, very mind-opening question. And I started thinking about that too. That do I really have to wake up? I mean, am I going to give something back to this world or not? And as you mentioned, the need, okay. That you have a company of 150 odd people and you're working for the buildings and that's how you generate your funds. I think you said something like that, but I saw it the other way around. It's actually the buildings who are working for you. True. Because if they were not there, you would be out of a job. So I saw it the other way around. As far as sustainability is concerned, just now when we were talking about architecture, that I wish there weren't that many architects, and you said that maybe there'll be barely 10 architects in this country who maybe worth looking at, but I would say that maybe on the entire planet there may not be more than 100. So I don't think it's only Pakistan. I think there are always bad architects or bad designers or whatever all over the world. Every city you will have not so good or not worthwhile buildings. And yes, I think that answer was very, very good, that the earlier they fall, the better. So I think we really have to look deep into ourselves. That is it the education that is not making them do good work, or is it the client, or is it the funds? I think it's all of it together that actually makes those not so good buildings that we keep on looking at. But I think for most good architects, I see it positively. That if we didn't have good buildings, or if we didn't have bad buildings, our buildings would look good. So, but I wish there were very good buildings, so you would have good competition. That you would raise your bar yourself, because the rest of the market is very good. So, no questions, but there is comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. We have a shortage of time, so I'm going to close the session, and I would like to thank Ijaz Saab, Yahya Jan, Ms. Tanveer, Ron, and Khalid Saab. And thank you for your valuable input. It was a total pleasure just listening to you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, the shade is just right. Yeah. And the shade is just right. But the shade. Thank you.
Thank you for such a brilliant and thought-provoking session. Now I would like to invite Ms. Saima Ferry, who is the communication designer currently working as Professor of Practice in the Department of Communication Design and is also the director of the Center of Media. Please welcome Simon Haley.
Greeting. This is always in the college. And this is studied at the National College of Art, and Professor Naj Aparala will vouch for this. Also, it's always great, to be back at ABA. Thank you, Maria. I was chair for the last 2 cycles for the one, and I'm glad that we're continuing. Okay, thank you. Just a quick introduction. That was pre-COVID. Post-COVID, we are not active. I am primarily teaching in the Department of Business Studies, University of Karachi, and design. Apart from that, we have a small interdisciplinary collective which works in Pakistan to open its for cultural production. Other than that, I'm also the curator at the Motor. So, but enough about me. We have 2 presentations today, and in the design segment, one of them being photographer Ali Umar, and the other Muhammad Umar, who is a jewelry dialogue artist. So I shall introduce Arif. I've known you since 1990s. He is one of the most prolific and phenomenal artists in Pakistan, and it's always an honor to work with you, as well as I'm glad you're here with us. You picked up your camera in 1985, and how should we put it? You arrived in 1989, and has several books, the latest one being AJ Phase 8. So, I don't know for you.
It's great to be here.
White light.
These white lights are close to the stop. Thank you. You can shut this for the time being. That's why I started shooting in 85, picked up the camera, and editorially that. I was based in Karachi for 60 odd years. I was born there, so my portfolio is mainly made up of Karachi images, which are in shapes of various books as well. But recently I shifted to leave as a family shifted to Islamabad. So I'm exploring and trying to look at things around Islamabad, and of course also with more, because although I have an archive which is scattered in terms of images of Lahore, now I have the opportunity to visit Lahore more often. So what I've chosen to show you today is that 10 images basically of Lahore, which are sort of shot between 94 and 2023. Just a flavor, give you a flavor of what I do as a photographer. And these are basically all self-assigned projects which I keep doing. That's the best thing I know how to do. So let's start with the first. It's not the first. Okay, this is
the famous Papu Dolwala or Papu Sai later, he was called this in 1994. And this was shot at the Shah Jamal Shrine, and he was like, not really known, people knew him, but not that much. He wasn't in the music circles or the art circles as such at that time. So, this is 94 and he's performing, he performed every Thursday at the Shrine, Thursday evenings. So this is my first encounter with him, and people under the tree, this tree is very, sort of a tree of life for that particular moment. Because design, the concept of designing a photograph is basically the ornament on memory basically. The photograph is always like, the moment always goes away, so it's how you decorate the moment. So these elements are basically related to geometry and perspective, and in photography of course light as well. So these are parts which make up design. I think in all visuals, especially photography, most of what it's like the art of light. So next page. This is at the Focus Cafe, and this is I think 2012. Cafe, I don't think. And there is a sort of a similarity between the statue. Sort of similar. And of course the light falling on the Badshah Mosque in the back. There's a play of geometry, the triangles in it. Next. This is again Shah Jamal, this is 94. Next please. Okay, this is Party Gate, Lahore. This old city of Lahore, this temple that already holding is holding his father's picture. So there is, as you grow as a photographer, the perspective grows. Perspective is like basically based on how you grow up, what you read, what you see. So those chains are there. He's in a shot. You can see those chains. You can see the shadows. You can see him bound to what his father used to practice. It's like a shot, but you can't see the visual. But only it was sort of what attracted me to document the image. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And it's probably like, it's 2018 winter, and it's like maybe late afternoon because it's like warmish kind of light. Next. This is the beginning of entrance to Party Gate. Shot from the gate side. This is just shot recently. This is also the old city. This is the high gate where you go in, because that's what I do when I come to the city. I just go to the old city, and I'm trying to get familiar with it because I haven't been around it that long, so just looking and documenting, So you never know what is going to be part of the portfolio of the archives. It's a fun. This is early morning. This is like maybe like 8 o'clock in the morning. Because the city is very interesting in terms of the way it's built because of light. Filters through the buildings, and the narrow streets, and you find really good geometry patterns. Here you can see the triangle that the light is making. Okay, next please. This is again Shah Jamal. This is shot last year. This is outside the shrine. How the central man and all these people are stuck in their individual chosen circumstances. Next please. This is again a shot from the old city, which what attracted me was this girl with her mother, and the way she's wearing that backpack over her head. She's covered, it's like a triangle, and then there's a crisscross of the whole street. There's a lot of geometry happening in the visual.
this is mostly the Raza in Kochi area. Next to this is the grain market at Puri Mandi in close to a Puri gate. The thing is actually grains, chanas. And then again you can see the subtle, it's not subtle actually, you can see the triangle of the figures in the foreground and the one in the back. So this geometry for me makes images which I collect here. Next please. This is close to a place called Multi Bazaar. This is from when you go through Taksali Gate. I mean, I'm not familiar with the city, so I can't really guide you where this is. But as I told you earlier, this is all during these documentative works which I do. I mean, what I'm doing is, what I'm trying to say is I'm just collecting images for myself, which can make me make a folio or be part of the collection. So this is also early morning and the light is what is making it more complete as a visual. So that's what it is, just a flavor of what I do as a photographer. Thank you.
Thanks very much, I think we will take it a lot more to understand. But really gorgeous work as always. We've got more work. He is a jewelry designer, educationist, as well as a researcher. He happens to have 3 degrees. One being the Bachelor of Design from NCA. Then he went on to do a master's from Sydney College of Arts and an MPhil from PS Faculty, where he was the head of Gems and Jewelry Design Department. Most interestingly, he is the 3rd generation of the jewelry artist, craftsman, artisan, designer. And that's precious. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you, Maya, for including me into that presentation. So, design has many languages. Today we have a very good session on the architecture. And definitely it has a very big volume. But now I'm going to introduce you to very small things. And there's the jewelry which I designed. So basically I'm a jewelry designer, I'm an educationist and researcher. I have been doing it for last more than 10 years. For me, jewelry is actually not only making aesthetically beautiful objects. Way of life. By saying that means that I am always searching for new inspiration, looking for new material, and getting inspired in my new environment. Because a lot of times people say that, okay, where does your inspiration come from? How do you think? How do you think like a designer? My answer to my students is always that look around you, what you find, what you see, where you live, what you collect, everything as an inspiration. You just have to look closely, you have to look very closely at what you are doing. This is my studio. Basically, I have a basic studio. This is a basic studio for me, but you can see that it has multiple kind of platforms in them. For example, here is my soldering, station. These are different kind of small hammers. These are cutters, pliers, all of this. This is my main bench. This is my drill machine and all other tools. In this, there are toolboxes. There are hundreds and hundreds of tools are available to work with. So when I'm designing something and I'm making something, I have to memorize that where the tool is, what kind of tool I need to make something, what kind of material I need. So everything is surrounded around me. It's a spot where I can meditate, where I can make things, I can think, I can get away from all the hassle and bustle of the world and think only on what I'm making or what I want to live. So it's a kind of meditation for me to work in my studio. When talking about jewelry design, it's kind of new genre in Pakistan. The reason is that it came into the education field, let's say 10 years ago or 12 years ago. There were only a handful of institutions who are giving degree in this specific field, like PIFT, where I'm heading as a HOD in one of the institutes. It is giving 4 years bachelor's degree. And but obviously, jewelry has a rich background and it has a diverse tradition in subcontinent. It dated back 3,000 of years. I think ornamented pieces and jewelry pieces in this region actually highlight age-old socio-cultural and environmental issues as well as concepts related to gender, inclusivity and ethical sourcing. This particular ring is made by lapis lazuli sourced from Afghanistan and wood. This is in a permanent collection of Gurmani Centre for Language of Art and Literature and Literature LUMS. The wood which you are looking at is always come from discarded pieces of furniture, or sometimes it come from old, let's say window stackings from the architectural building. So you can see that what remains left from the other thing become precious to my jewelry. Precious in my aspect, I make them precious by converting them to jewelry. Okay, so it's not always about the material. Sometimes in the last section there were some words like collective consciousness and collective memory. So a lot of times we have to think, or my observation is that I have to think about the objects which belongs to us or which we carry or which we use. Actually we do share memory with them. So this particular water container is part of my exhibition in 2022. In this it's a simple container, a water jar. But I have shared a lot of memories with this particular object. While sitting in NCA canteen with my friends, chatting with them, spending hours and hours, talking about different things. And I also spent some time with this object in different marriages while eating food and having this particular object in front of me. So it has certain kind of nostalgic kind of memory. It gives me a nostalgic memory whenever I look at this object. But somehow this memory or this object is not anymore there. It's there, but I cannot see it much because of the consumer society, the plastic objects which are already there. So what I have done is I have transformed it into a very small piece. It's around about 37 mm tall. You can wear it, and I'm just trying to make a heirloom for the next generation, which so that they can also enjoy that memory. They can also enjoy or collect that memory and transfer it to the next generation. And sometimes I'm looking at the material and experimentation. For example, these three series of objects, or this is actually a ring. These two are pendants. So the design process is very organic. I mean, like, I don't think or I don't design randomly. It's more like in these pieces. Initially, I only made this and this enameled piece. Enamel is a process in which crushed glass is melted on 920 degrees centigrade in a furnace so that it fused on a surface. So initially, I just made these things. Later on, I sit on my bench and look at how can I use it, how can I, make it aesthetically beautiful, and perhaps some other material can incorporate into it. So eventually these designs come out from thinking and rethinking and experimenting. Here I have used it twice, and it's more about experimenting about different kind of settings, because not stones are set normally in a certain way. So I just challenged that to set in a different way. Why not it can be set in a different way? So I was just trying to figure out that how a stone can be set. So these designs come out like that. Apart from material, I also get inspired from different kind of as I said, surroundings. So one day I was just looking at some article in which they were talking about the struggle for women who were carrying water from one place to another place in her. So that was really hit me hard, because I never thought of that. We just pick a bottle of water of Nestle and drink it and throw it away. So how precious is water for them who are carrying them from one place to another place? And it's not about one time. It's every day. Every day they have to do it. And we never thought about it. So I thought, why not to think about it? So I sketched it in a certain way. I sketched one scenario in which they're carrying some water in a container. So I tried to develop something around it. So this was just some initial sketch. So I had something to wear. Eventually it comes to stuff like this. Series of rings. So I used a lathe machine. Again, in this particular process, the material or the wood came from a very old chair, a broken chair, leg of a broken chair basically. So I used that to make these rings. So you can see there are three things you can see lying there. There's some carving which I was doing. The next process was on my bench. It was more like working on it in a different way, carving it out, giving simple details, carving the metal. This particular piece which you are looking at is a kundan piece. Basically, kundan is the process. It's a lost technique in Pakistan. It's a process in which we use 24 karat gold to embed diamond, rough cut diamond, into a particular container or bezel, you can say. So it took me 5 years to learn this technique. I went 6 times to India. I went like 2 to 3 times to Karachi. I sourced out different people that how can I learn this technique so that perhaps I can devise this craft. So this was also the project in my MPhil in which I was doing some research on it. So it took me like 5 to 6 years to just learn this particular craft, and eventually I was able to make this piece. So you can imagine that how much precious this particular piece is to me. So when I tried to figure it out where I want to put this precious piece, so I put it in a ring. So these are the final pieces which come out. So it's carrier 1, carrier 2 and carrier 3. So you can make a kind of a similarity that where it started from and how it is designed. So it's statement pieces, collectible pieces, and also has a certain kind of meaning behind them. This is another example, another shot of the same pieces. So you can see different details. This is a Kundan piece, this is enameling. So this was done in 2019, but still continues. So this was a very small presentation on the process and thinking process of the designer and how do we work and how do we think. So it's a smaller object, but still have a very longer and deeper process to work with. Thank you very much.
No, just more. Don't see you.
Yeah.
I believe we're joined by Hina Ali Khan, one of the panelists. Yeah, I can see you. Thank you. And you've got Javed Jabbar Saab as well?
No, I don't think that is honest.
Fair enough. I think we can show. So before we go forward, we've got Dr. Hina Ali with us, who is the course leader, actually joining us from London. And she's the course leader for the Master's Design at the London College of Communication, UCL. She's a designer, researcher, academic, as well as a she holds a practice-led doctorate in graphic communication design for sustainable social innovation from Central St. Martin's, UAL. I think she was the first PhD, to my knowledge, who actually pursued in design. So, welcome, Hina.
Thank you so much.
I think what I'll do is I'll give you the floor, Hina, to ask a couple of questions, please. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be part of ADA. Thanks, Maria. And it's so lovely to see you again, Saima, as always. Thank you so much, Arif and Omar, for such, if I'm saying the names right, I hope, for such amazing presentations. I just have a comment, and then I'll just go to my question. First of all, I think I just found it really amazing in Omar's presentation when he talks about aesthetically pleasing objects as a way of life. So for me, I think it'd be a little bit, it just made me a little bit more curious about the kind of work that you do, Omar, and how do you integrate jewelry making with a way of life? Because I think you engage with a very intrinsic process, and it's got a lot of deep thinking behind it, and you're creating objects that are more sculpture in a sense as well. So how do you perceive the wearers of these jewelry interacting with the objects that you create, and how do you feel that it impacts who they are as people?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So when I talk about the way of life, it's mean that even my student asks me a lot of time that you always tell us to, develop a habit of understanding surrounding and observing things. So what do you mean by that? So I say that, okay, when imagine you are working on your bench, and you have to remember that where the tools are, where I have put my, all my material. So it's a coordination of body and mind, and eventually. So it's a coordination of body and mind. So eventually, when you are doing a coordination between your body and mind and making something, it makes you think. It makes you to work in any other discipline. For example, if you are doing cooking, you also need this kind of coordination in which you have coordination with your body. So I ask them, if you don't know the cooking and you know the jewelry making, you can do that because you have the coordination. And again, if you meditate yourself through this process, through this creative process, again you can have a very good life in future. So that's how I ask them to develop a habit of whatever they are doing, enjoy it. Meditate themselves and try to figure out why they are here, why they want to do it, why they want to become a jewelry designer, why they want to make things. And eventually, the second part of your question was that how do you see the wearer, that who will wear it? So again, if you remember in my second slide, in which I have shown a very small container, that container have a shared memories. So it's kind of a room which I want to make for the younger generation, for the next generation, who can actually carry those memories to the next generation perhaps. So how I see my wearer is more like a common person who can have connectivity with the culture, with the roots, and he can actually want to take that roots further. So it's just a general public. Anybody can wear it. It's not only about very specific person or specific target.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very, very, very interesting take on jewelry making, and also very different. And I have a follow-up question from that, because you also talk about gender inclusivity and how the kind of jewelry that you design represents that. Because I know I'm from Pakistan, so I know jewelry has a very specific meaning where we come from, and it's also connected to social statuses. It's also connected to different cultural festivals, etc. So for me, I think it's really interesting how you take it to the idea, or how do you connect it with the idea of gender inclusivity?
Okay, so it's a different kind of concept. For example, I have not shown some work here. My first exhibition, first solo, was in Rohtas Gallery. The title of that exhibition was Bringing the Brooch Back. So the brooch, which is commonly is an object which you use on your shirt or on your turban. It was a common object which was used in our history by Mughals and afterwards. But now I can't see men wearing any kind of jewelry right now. So at that point, I was trying to make a comment that okay, the jewelry or the object which I'm making is a gender neutral object. Anybody can wear it. Or even my jewelry which I make myself, it also has a gender neutral thing. Anybody can wear it. So I have that thing in my mind, but definitely everybody has a different kind of aesthetics to, or different charts to wear. So yeah, and apart from that, I feel like in terms of hierarchy, for example, some jewelry is only worn by elite class. So I've seen that I always say that ornamentation or ornamental jewelry can be worn by every person. So it's not only about men, it's not only about women. Yeah, the culture, because I already talked, the genre is quite new in Pakistan, so it will take time for people to understand that how to take it. And I've seen a lot of people, especially men, wearing a ring. But I think the trend is changing with the passage of time.
But I mean, we also know that in our culture or in the subcontinent, there was jewelry that was worn by men, in fact, more so men than women. Yes. So I think that's just a shift that happened, more the past century.
I think past century, that is more, it happened in the past century when the jewelry, obviously there is also a religious aspect within that. The gold is not worn by men, but silver is normally worn by worn right now by the men, and people look for different kind of material. For example, I use wood. Wood is very common, very it doesn't have any kind of background in terms of it cannot wear it. So it's a common thing, common material. So it can be worn by anyone. I mean, like it doesn't have any kind of restriction from as a religion or as a it doesn't have any kind of reaction or something like technically or philosophically. That's how I use material so that it can be worn by anyone.
Thanks for bringing that up. Just for those who don't understand the distinction between silver and gold and the reason that men are not, what would be the right word, do not usually wear gold, and correct me, anybody in the audience, if I'm wrong, that it's usually to do with humility and just ensuring that you're. Does anybody want to add to that? Because that's the reason I was told.
Yeah, but yes, a lot of men don't wear gold for religious reasons, but white gold, if it's okay. So it's stole again. So I question those people, but you're already wearing gold, just color change. But yes, white gold they do. But
or platinum.
Yeah, or platinum. Yeah.
But I think interestingly enough, I think this is also, Simone, as you said, this is that 18th question like block, the right to beauty. And I think we're talking about the aesthetics, of course. Sorry. You're going to fade her. Thanks. And we are coming to you. We have not forgotten you.
Yes, I have a question for Arif as well.
Yes, please go ahead. Please.
Yeah, because I just wanted to. I mean, that's why I was just probing. I was probing Umar a little bit about the kind of narratives that surround these kind of objects, because these narratives actually impact the kind of objects we create as well. And then looking at Arif's photography, such amazing stark sensorial images where you see this explicit play of light and dark, and also making what we deem as ordinary, or what we might deem as ordinary, extraordinary. So for me, that was my impression when Saima, you sent me the portfolio and when I was looking at it. So for me, I think the question is again the framing of these narratives, the framing of these I would call these ethnographies, the way these images capture the essence or the atmosphere or the environment of these spaces that Arif has actually interacted with. So my question to you, Arif, is how do you decide that this is worth photographing and this is something that I really don't want to photograph? So how do you make that decision about capturing or framing certain spaces?
It's based on my perspective, I mean, as I mentioned in the presentation. So it's what I've read, how I've grown up, what I've seen. I get for inspiration, I look at international portfolios of photographers. Then I look at a lot of books on paintings as well, local artists as well as international artists. And I see how they use light, I see what's good. I go to museums, I see art. And so you have a sort of a benchmark in your mind. I mean, when you see things around you, I mean, photography is about observation and how to see the light and the design element in the medium to make it sort of extraordinary, It's all about how you see things. I mean, one photographer's perspective is different from the other. So these decisions are made through going out again and again disciplining myself to looking at things which are to repetitive. So I sort of can tell instinctively from my experience or my reading vocabulary that ये चाहिए या नहीं चाहिए, whether I want this image or not. I mean, when you collect images and then when you look at them through a contact sheet or through a computer and you download them, and then it is at that time you decide whether the picture makes it or not. Initially you're busy collecting it, but even when you're shooting them or collecting them, I mean, this is the main motivation or the choice. I can answer your question.
Yes, that's very interesting. And then I have a follow-up question because I see a very strong human aspect in the photography. What comes to my mind is specifically that photograph that you've taken from inside the shop, where we see the back of the shopkeeper and then we see a view that's outside. It's just more like you're trying to show the perspective of not the customers but the shopkeeper. So it's an alternative view for me in the way I perceive it. So I think it's what I personally feel looking at your photography is human factor and also the human eye and the way we view the world around us forms a very important part. So I think again for me the question would be that this aspect of spaces and humans and interaction and the way your photography portrays it. So what are the ideas or what are the stories you're trying to tell through your photography?
When I was younger, I was just taking pictures as I was taking samples as I grow older and sort of I make sense of why I'm doing this. I don't know much of images which basically show people because I'm mostly into people. The basically what I see is that you're just trapped in your individual circumstances, and that sort of fascinates me and resonates with me, and I want to sort of be aware to recognize being thrown into a situation. The metaphysical root of that would be opacity, how we're thrown into different circumstances. By the time you're born, then you're in it. And this is what fascinates me, because and this is what I collect. And I people basically sort of because they are trapped with the shot in which I showed that shopkeeper with his father's portrait. The change fascinated me. I mean, when you're shooting, you're looking at an image and you can either crop what you see or again what perspective that chain reminds me to the roots of his circumstance, what he's carrying on. So this is what I have in the collection of this during the years. So hopefully if in a couple of years when I do sort of make a food out of it, maybe like some of the song will work for me.
Sure.
I had an exhibition recently which was called The Long Elevator Feet. Happened at Hostel in Islam. And I have a painting which shows right beyond this process. Which is going to mind maybe or maybe that it's common to a lot of people too, but it fascinates me. So that's what I do in general.
Thank you. When we were having this conversation earlier, and you talked about photography being almost like a ritual for you. right? And where you, if not on a daily, almost on a daily basis, you pick up that camera and you go and you're clicking and you're looking. There are two questions here. One, what propels you, right? And I think you may have answered that, but I would like to hear that again. Two, this idea, because this is coming back to Hina's question about what you see or what you capture and what you don't, and how the analog, that shift from the analog to the digital may have affected that for you.
First question, the answer is basically, it's like a corrector's fetish, you know, which I told you mistakes. I like to make images, and that's what I do when I'm getting images and visuals, you know. So probably first, then art and then literature. 1, 2, 3. So that's what I'm doing when I'm shooting every other day. So it's sort of instinctive. I mean, I can't pinpoint it, but I think a collector's fetish should be the right answer for that. The second question, it doesn't really matter whether you're shooting camera or digital. That has not affected you shooting camera. Digital is just a format of immediacy, and it gives you an image quicker than the analog, and you always basically it's a long process of being enlarging and selecting. So I think what means that my transition from work and transition from work to digital, which is helping in terms of discipline, because there's certain amount of people shooting, more people too who started on digital marketing. So these kind of technicalities are in the end not really immaterial in terms of the power of visual.
Thank you. And just one question from me, and if there's, then I'll come back to Hina if there's any, let's talk about questions. Acha, so interestingly, Arif Ahmed talks about that image, right, where, there is this shopkeeper with the chain and this entrapment that he wanted to, pick up on or highlight. And now I want to come to you and ask about the fact that you are the third generation, and how did you grow up, and what did you, and I know we've spoken about it, so I would really like for you to share this, please.
So, it's a very interesting question and personal question how I grew up with and how I came to the field. So basically I'm the third generation of, I can say, the craft person. And I don't mind to be called as a craftsman. The reason is that I have learned a lot of things from craftsmen. My uncle was a craftsman, cousin was a craftsman, my grandfather was a craftsman. And I'm the only person in my whole family who went to NCA, who went towards pursuing the art and design education properly. And I was lucky enough to have good mentors like Arun Nabar from Karachi. So they guided me to, you need to go towards this field. So, the whole circumstances made me feel that I'm lucky enough that I'm here and I'm into this. And I was able to learn a lot of things from a very common people, very common persons, and eventually I'm here right now where I've not only learned craft from craftsmen, but from designers, from different institutes, from all over. I've gone to all around the world. So this is something which I'm proud of, being called the third generation of the craft persons.
But I'm also talking about your studio, and that as a child.
That because when I'm talking about my uncle and my grandfather was a craft person, so I used to, it comes into my childhood memories too, because I used to go to their
workshop, a small workshop in a very small town near to Nagawa. And they have a very small goldsmithing shop. So I used to go there, look at their tools. I was, privileged enough that in my childhood I was able to hold gold and cut it and feel it. It has a very different feel when you are making it. It's a precious metal, but still it has a, certain kind of malleability, softness, beauty, color. So it attracts me at that level too, even in my childhood. So that memory was still in my mind. So when I was, basically all of my family is from doctors and engineers. So when I went into the FSC, so I was also a medical student. I actually got admission into a medical school. I went there for only, let's say, one semester, and eventually I shifted to National Career Pass after that. So I was going to be a doctor, but eventually I ended up being a jewelry designer. So, it's a path which leads you, but apart from that, it's your passion too, I feel like. Because even in NCA, I was doing different things related to metal. I was making jewelry for fashion shows. I was working with people who, even I was making small objects. So it drives me towards this. So I think there was a lot of contribution of my mentors, of my memories, of my background, of my previous history, which leads me towards this field. And right now I'm
So you don't feel any entrapment, and you're not chained.
No, I feel I don't feel entrapment. My mind is always in a state of flux where I'm seeking new things. I'm looking at new stuff. Sometimes even my wife asks me, "What are you thinking? You are with me." So, so basically, artist mind works like that. We are always thinking. We are always in a constant phase of looking for the inspiration and thinking of something which we have read. It's not like that. That design come from somewhere else. It's come from your thinking process. Sometimes you just start sketching and that's brilliant. That's what I'm going to make out of it. So it's not like I sit and design something. It's a constant way of life. Like we're constantly working and constantly thinking. And that's how my process of designing comes out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hina, if you have any closing remarks here.
I just, just very quickly, I think both Arif and Umar's work, it's so grounded in the context, in our social cultural context, and a representation of the space that they occupy as designers, but also as Pakistani designers and artists. And I feel that this representation through their work is amazing, very impressive, and also the meaning behind the kind of work that's been created. Also kind of thinking about gender inclusivity, ethical sourcing, decoding the narratives, and also making extraordinary from the ordinary are the kind of themes that I picked up from their work. So I just want to congratulate them on achieving this.
Thank you. I don't know whether we have any time for questions, Maria, at all.
The next question is probably taking
Khalas.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Privilege.
Such a wonderful session. Now, the third session on art, I would like to invite Radhika Shatola. I don't think she needs any introduction, so a huge round of applause for Radhika Shatola.
Hi everyone. Morning, Assalamualaikum. I'm Nadesh Paula. I'm an artist and I'm also a teacher. And so today we have presentations by three people. And I'm honored to be introducing them to you. The first person is Anur Vittal. And now I've forgotten Anur's bio in my handbag because I've been copying all morning. So I'm just going to make a very short introduction to who Anur is and what he does. Anur lives in Manchester, joined us as he was a member of the jury for art. I being the chair for the jury for art. And he joined us from Manchester while we were doing the jury. There were two other people on that jury. One was Professor Ilham Dadi from Cornell University, who's an art historian and an artist. And the third person was Shireen Gandhi of the Kemwood Gallery in Bombay. So we had this very diverse annual jury, and it was extremely interesting. I was absolutely silent while the protest was ongoing, but all of them, being great expert professionals in doing such things, finished off their selection in a matter of 3 or 4 hours, much to my surprise. Unfortunately, Ilham can't join us because his term has started, and moreover, he's involved with the Sharjah Biennale, and he's in Sharjah at the moment. And of course, Shireen is an Indian, and to get somebody from India across to Pakistan is very, very difficult. So we have Anur, and I'm delighted that Anur is here. Anur is a professor at the Manchester Metropolitan University. He is a curator, an international curator. He has been responsible for introducing art from South Asia all across Britain, in other places as well. He has been a friend of ours for over 25 years. And it's a great pleasure to have him here in person. And I'm sure that we will enjoy his presentation.
Thank you for having me here, Maria, Najmi, Rojan, all my dear friends. And it's always lovely to be here in Pakistan. So I'm going to talk to you about what the echo is.
I think you've got your mics. Yeah, you've got your telephone one there, so just take it out. But how you have to turn off the other one.
Is that better, yeah?
But on this one, the mobile one. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
It's not, you can't hear it. But I'll try and voice, speak aloud.
So yeah, I mean, I'm a practicing artist. I'm based in Manchester, and I teach at Manchester Metropolitan University. I was fortunate to study fine art at Wolverhampton University many years ago under Anish Kapoor and various other tutors. And then I was awarded a Commonwealth scholarship to go to India for 2 years and studied under Balan Sheikh and various other artists there. So I went back to England and started really to build my career as a curator. Because living as an artist, even in England, is not is not possible. So I started curating at Huddersfield Art Gallery and also then moved on to Gallery Alton. Don't know whether people know Greater Manchester or not, but there's this 10 connotation of different places. So I curated my first big show, I guess, from Pakistan was called Campus Surface. And it was 6 artists, which was co-curated by Richard Hillman. When I was staying here, oh my God, this is when I first met you, Raji and Salima and many other people. So yeah, this was quite an exciting exhibition. It was an exhibition of sculpture, printmaking, photography and mixed media by, these are the artists, Liaquat Ali, Akram Dost Baloch, Iftikhar Dadi, Sumaya Durrani, Duriya Kazi and Samina Mansouri. And Huddersfield Art Gallery launched on 2nd of September to the 28th of October 1995, so you can see how long it was. So I'll just read the information about Campus Surface, because I think it's really, it was probably the first of its kind show in Pakistan, including Nima Raya Smith, who curated Intelligent Rebellion. Again, I think you were right as well. So the title Campus Surface alludes to both a literal and metaphorical interpretation of artistic ideas. In literal terms, the artists, much like any other, tamper or manipulate the surface with which they work. Samina Mansouri's paintings are obsessively worked surfaces, whilst Akram Dost Baloch's engravings and paintings on wood erase or even obscure detail to create symbols anonymously rather than specific events. Metaphorically, the title relates to the recent tendency for the work of artists from the South Asian subcontinent, Africa or South America to be exoticized and given a subservient role in relation to Western art practices. Campus Surface is not a survey show, or was not a survey show, should I say. The artists in the exhibition were not representative of the movement in Pakistani art, because what often happens in England is when you do an exhibition, suddenly it's kind of exoticized. Oh, this is art from Pakistan or from Africa or wherever. Therefore, Campus Surface aimed to transgress the surface presentation by enabling a group of artists to show large examples of their work. The artists addressed a range of complex issues relating to the representation of women in art, popular culture, class, religion, and the politics of their everyday lives. All the artists were invited to produce new work for the exhibition, and in some cases they selected to show older works alongside new work. So this exhibition toured nationally as well in England, which was really good because it brought artists' work from Pakistan to a wider community. I also invited most of the artists to come, so they were present, and they did workshops and talked about work, which was very good. So in 2007, I founded an agency called Shisha, it's Contemporary South Asian and Trans Visual Arts Agency based in Manchester. So it was in 2001, and it also became a charity. CISA was a new visionary organisation with a strong team to deliver its mission. It also initiated partnerships to support artists, makers and curators to develop and build audiences and enable other key organizations to promote and extend their work through a wide range of artistic activity. This was, again, the first time that an organization like Shisha was born, I guess. It was funded by the Arts Council of England. And through Shisha, I organized a unique project called Art Salvation. It was a program which brought artists from Bangladesh, with Mansoor al-Islam as a curator, from India, Ghulam Sheikh, from Pakistan, Saeed Mahashmi, and Naji, and from Sri Lanka, Shamini Pereira, to England for the first time. Art Salvation presented a series of 4 seminal exhibitions, plus residencies, 3 publications, and a conference exploring international art practice and the crossing of art and craft boundaries. The exhibition set unprecedented records featuring 36 artists in 4 separate venues across the Northwest as part of the Commonwealth Games program. So it was really important to bring art from South Asia to the UK and to demonstrate the kind of work that's happening over here. You know, for many people, many artists or curators, they had no knowledge at all of what was happening here. So it was really important to kind of bring that on board. The next project that I curated was the Asia Triangle Manchester, and the first program was in 2008. It was an innovative and dynamic kind of artwork which brought artists from China, from Singapore, from South Asia to Manchester, and again, to bring the ATM, the Asia Triangle Manchester, to commission artists, and then to show their work, and then to have conferences, debates, and publications as well. Actually, I've got a few publications that I'll leave for you later on. Was really important, and I'm actually still working on the Asia Triangle. The next edition is going to be next year. It's always very, very complicated to do these projects because I have to fundraise, and it's just myself. I have to create a team to help me deliver the program. So, hence the funding. So this funding is going to go in the next few months, hopefully, to do the next edition. And the triangle works with an artistic program with a theme. So the first one in 2008 was Artist as the Protester. So how do artists protest through their work? And I did have some slides here and I wanted to show you, but I don't know how that's going to be possible or not. So the first artist was Chinese performance artist. I don't know whether you've heard about him, Han Bing. So Han Bing.
Are you transferring it alone?
Yeah. These are the slides too.
Yes, to give permission.
You need another cable. So Han Bing, with his performance,
I can't even tell you. Very bad stuff. Look, type energy. Thank you.
Doesn't seem to be very much around. Anyway, yeah, the slides are not working sadly, so I'll just talk for a few more minutes. So Hanbing, who is a performance-based artist, he does this incredible thing, which is walking with a cabbage on a leash, right? So I love this idea, and it was protesting about how the Chinese bourgeoisie, they take their dogs in the parks. So he was protesting this notion of the cabbage. So he came to Manchester, and we got these Savoy cabbages, and there was a group of us with him walking in the city centre with our cabbages being kind of hammered on the pavement. And there was this tourist who came, and they were looking at us thinking, who are these mad people? Maybe it's a joke or something. What are you doing? And I said to one of the guys, I said, well, actually, this is a performance piece of art. And he didn't get it. But anyway, it was great. And I invited Hanbing again 2 years ago, where he did this performance kind of with mirrors. So you put mirror on your face, so you're kind of concealing your head. And then you get a flag. You have many different flags of different nations. So you embrace that flag, and again you do a performance from the Manchester Cathedral to a place called Home, which is like a cinema and a gallery. And again, people were like looking at us and seeing all this, wondering performance artists. But it was great to be able to do that and kind of try and hi Rashid, and try and change that whole kind of stuff, in terms of what's normal or what isn't. Also, the first triangle, I showed an Afghani artist, street artist called Samshia Hassani. I don't know whether you're familiar with her work or not. She's a street artist, and what she would do is she would go out in Kabul and paint this incredible paintings of women. And she was unfortunately unable to come to Manchester, but her work was shown at the Imperial War Museum North, which again was really interesting. It showed Nalini Malani's work as well. Shares an account and many others.
Technology gets you the better of us, as always.
Should have done this.
Oh, different languages. You are speaking.
And most recently, in 2001, I worked with Manchester International Festival and Rashid Rana for a project called Earth, where Rashid was exhibited in 2 spaces in Manchester. And he did this amazing piece of work, which was basically series of objects with no design at all. And maybe Rashid can say a few words about that as well. Unfortunately, But I'm supposed to present. So that was present. So that was a great piece of work. I'm also working with Manchester International Festival for a new commission, and that's going to be highlighted shortly. We've not announced the artist, but she's from Lahore as well. Okay, let's just show this.
USB commander, right?
Manchester is a great cultural city. You know, we have 200 languages spoken in the city, so it's incredibly diverse, and it's always been a welcoming city for Asian communities. So when we have students from different parts of the world, they feel a lot sort of safe and feel as though it's kind of they're welcomed, whereas perhaps in other places that's not the case. So these are just a few images, I guess. This is part of the triennial at Imperial. Next one. This is Cézanne's work. These are kind of objects that are almost mummified, and hung for people to look at, feel and touch. Next one. That's part of the Asia Triennial, and it was at a gallery called Fairy Museum and Art Gallery, one of the branch galleries. Next one. That's it. Okay. All right then. Thank you very much for the short presentation, and I'm sorry about the slides.
I'm going to now invite Nurjahan Bilrani, who certainly does not need any introduction, but to come and talk to us about this project that she was the curator for, Expo 2020, the Pakistan Pavilion, last year in Dubai. And Nurjahan wears many hats. She's an artist, she is an educator, she's the founder of the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture, and she is an extremely well-known textile designer who has also been engaged in the revival of traditional craft practices, and especially the use of indigo, and she is the author of books as well, and so on and so on. I have of course known Nurjahan since we were in school, myself and Ijaza and Nurjahan are class fellows. So you can see that we go back a very long way. So welcome Nurjahan.
And we love her.
मैं इधर को बैठती हूँ, आपको बैठना मुझे वीडियो आ रही है।
Assalamualaikum everybody. Now towards the end you must be exhausted. Nachi कुछ ज़्यादा ही बोल रही हूँ. We also have, you forgot one very important connection. Hyderabadi connection. All three. Yes. Of course.
and 3 different years. Ijaz was a year senior to me, and Naji was a year
Senior?
senior.
No,
to me, yes.
That's right.
But really, but I think that I've reached that age कि 50 साल हो गए मुझे काम करते हुए. So I'm not going to go into all the intricacies of how the expo happened, and especially after the team, it happens once every 5 years, and before that, which is 2015, what was it? I'm so bad with dates. In Milan, the expo previous to that, there was an empty plot, and there was a plaque saying Pakistan. So that's the history that I was being given, that now we're having the expo and we've got a pavilion, and the project architect is sitting right here, would probably be able to speak better. Shahid Abdullah Saab yahan par hai, he deserves a hand after he's here and here. I was approached by a group to come and be the curator, and it was such a huge responsibility, really, to project Pakistan, and where do you begin and how do you begin. Ek jagah bani hui thi, it was already a design that was there, that was not to be changed. There were a lot of limitations that I had to work with. Rashid will talk about the exterior issues and problems or whatever, and how he managed. So I was given the inner space, and it was really interesting. That doesn't happen, it shouldn't happen, that the outer has nothing to do with the interior. It was just too late, shortage of time, shortage of money, and to deal with the government with a very clear idea of being to project Pakistan, as they had already worked out a title with the previous government, calling it Pakistan, Emerging Pakistan. And this, thank God, this group who actually got me had already decided Pakistan had emerged long before. And after going through such nonsense, so we still needed to sort of work out a kind of a title to under what am I doing and what am I curating, the inner journey. And when I started thinking and talking to a lot of people, scholars, and people who I believe really understand the country, and it seemed that Pakistan really has just so much of facets that people ourselves within the country have no idea about. So we came up with the title that Pakistan, the Hidden Treasure, and to see how that it will start moving. Yeah, so for me it was a huge responsibility to project Pakistan to the world in a given architectural space, and to be positioned with 192 countries with high resources, and they were all technologically advanced. So the government really wanted to project Pakistan as a technologically advanced country with cutting edge solutions. And it was ridiculous, so I kept saying, okay, show me one case that I can with confidence put across to the world and say, this is Pakistan, and there was none. And yet, there were so many treasures that needed to be shared globally. So I wanted to dissolve all what ADA stands for, the art, architecture, and design inside. I wanted to make it really experiential. And there's a thought that people are going to be seeing so many pavilions before they enter Pakistan's pavilion. I wanted them to actually turn and reverse their pace, to slow down, to be able to view things, having come in from UKs and France and Germany and India, all trying to show the world the high pace and cutting edge that they are in, to totally slow down, to reverse the gear, and to start experiencing, and to bring them. It was really tough, because whenever you ask anybody, then they would say, what is Pakistan standing for? What should we be showing about our country? So it was like, philanthropy, hospitality, generosity. how do you make the intangible into a tangible experience? So I thought it has to be experiential, to actually feel, to use all your senses to invoke and also to dispel. Pakistan is always blacklisted, a terrorist state, religion, Islamophobia. So how do you make a visitor coming and seeing the high technologically advanced pavilions and walk in and leave after going through whatever? It was a really rambling maze, and to walk out with a completely different thing than this. You're seeing life, you're seeing your religion in a completely different way. You understand Pakistan. So I'm going to share with you a video clip which a company made, again with a face and something that I don't agree, but that is what has been done. But it will show you glimpses. It's a little too fast-paced for my, it's just a reverse of what I tried to experience. So there are some testimonials, there are some images and how it began. So it's about sit back and view whatever has been put together. It's about 8 minutes long. After you've seen this, you will see the video here of the pavilion, and I'll be there to answer any questions and we can discuss out. And Rashid, I think after me, is going to talk about the exterior. You'll see a bit of a glimpse of that. So that just one last sentence that since we had Rashid Rana, the topmost artist in the country, I wanted to use the inner pavilion space to project for me, which I've spent my lifetime comes up half career. For me, it's a huge honor to have you here. Our Guru makes me feel very humble. To project our master craftspeople and our hidden indigenous technologies that have not been given any platform. So I thought I'm going to use this opportunity to put across, not sort of very informed and completely different to what young Dweller was saying, not that sensibility, but to bring out his grandfather's sensibilities. And people don't associate generally all what the rich heritage that we have. So it was just an attempt to try and bring that out more like an experience. So I'm going to let you view the video, which again I apologize that it's not been made in the pace or that sensibility as I would have liked it to be. Inshallah hum karenge. Sorry, kya? I lights please band kar dijiye pure. Okay. we were really fortunate. Uनका लंबा चौड़ा उनका question है मिला था, but because they started comparing all the pavilions and we had to apply for that, and mashallah, Pakistan got the second award, the silver award, as the best interior, and Japan was the first, and so out of 192 countries, extremely limited resources, and the government wanting completely a different picture. And yet, mashallah, I have to say here that Abdul Razak Daud Sahab was phenomenal in getting this project through. It would have been impossible. So not only once you entered and finished the inner journey that you saw, you moved into a shop which was because of lack of time, I've cut all that out, but we had a fabulous craft shop which did really well. And we ended up with the dhaba, which was our food, the cuisine of Pakistan. Sare Hindustan ki idhar people would come to want to eat food. I'd like you to give a big hand to Kamran Sheikh, who was responsible. It was all the senses, as I told you. It was not just your visual. This way, I paid a lot of, I saw to it that the fragrances in the right appropriate place also made a difference. We are running short of time. So there was motia, and there was a big bowl of the rose petals which changed every fourth day. So there was gulab, and you actually could dip your fingers and pick up some petals, and people really thought, is this holy? So you had some amazing comments from everyone, just got a few here. But I think a lot of architects who are here did visit the pavilion. And anyway, much shukriya to allow me to share this. Thank you.
Can I just add one or two sentences? Please do what Nurtan said. End result was, as we saw, quite stunning. But what we all went through, including Rashid, that every solution had a problem. And it was very difficult, and we were in the middle of COVID, and that actually made things a lot worse. But the biggest challenge for all of us was that out of the 192 pavilions, in one day you could not see more than 6 to 7 pavilions. And the big challenge was that why would anybody see Pakistan and come to the Pakistan pavilion? Because it was not a country that anybody wanted to see. And here the problem was that how do you bring them in? So you could have the world's best pavilion inside, but there was no way we could bring it in. And that's where I think Rashid's magic really worked.
So I'm going to invite Rashid Rama to come up and make his presentation. Again, we all know what Rashid's accomplishments are, but to connect this presentation to the short discussion that we're going to have afterwards, I'd like to begin by saying that Rashid is, of course, an internationally acknowledged, very, very well-known artist who has done a lot of work that hitherto was not actually attempted in Pakistan. But he is also the dean of a school of art and design, which is this at Beacon House National University. And that is a very important role that Rashid fulfills, and because he's an educator. So he balances his own practice with his teaching and his administering, and I think that this is something that I would like to talk about when we invite our other panelists, because all of them are educators, and we want to see what kind of an impact are their philosophies making, their pedagogies making in Pakistan. And so I would like Rashid to come and talk a bit about what he did at Expo, but also to share with us what he is thinking about in other work that he's doing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. ADA, architecture, much needed initiative to bring all the three together under one platform. So the challenge that you will face in the near future is that of the hardly divided categories, because boundaries are becoming very blurry, and that's something I think we're going to discuss. The discussion that Vijay has planned and curated. I will just say a few words about the project, Pakistan Pavilion project, because we have been here before, the same venue, we've spoken at length, so do not want to go to the online audience. I believe there's a big online audience for LUMS, I've been told. So, but just to say that the exhibition that Noor Jahan had created, I cannot imagine that any other exhibition in the history of Pakistan has represented Pakistan comprehensively in that way. For the first time at the International Forum, we recognized and acknowledged our diversity, our past, and did not start our history from Muhammad bin Qasim. So I've had the challenge and the small role to play to be able to attract the audience to come and see this marvelous exhibition, and Shahid Sahib entrusted me with the task of transforming architecture into art. This complicated idea, some of my architect friends might challenge that. Something we can discuss in the session. But essentially, I took reference from one of my earlier works called Desperately Seeking Paradise, where I have used reflective surface and printed surface in conjunction with each other to bring more complexity from the within very simplicity through these geometry. Seemingly identical units that you see are in fact unique 24,000 panels, fractionally different from each other, which served, apart from what it does aesthetically, it also helped me use the metaphor of Wadatul Shuhud, unity of all that appears. Something that we could say about our country, this land, which is more diverse than any other place, seasonally, climatically, geographically, racially, religiously, and often we don't talk about that it can be our strength, which unfortunately isn't the case right now. So something we really need to acknowledge and then cherish and celebrate and nurture. So I thought that these especially different units will come together in a harmonious order to something which is not identical, will come as one. So, but also, other than that, it breaks the solidity and the mass of the structure I was given to work with, and to create deeper element of perforation or transparency optically as opposed to physically. Next, please. Next.
Right, bunker there. You go.
So as I was mentioning, so I will take the opportunity to share some of my earlier works. For instance, this work that became the basis for the intervention called Unity of All That Appears, and where I often use in my practice the element of, visually speaking, element of grid,
and conceptually speaking, the element of duality together in this three-dimensional world where I'm pushing the idea of two-dimensionality into third dimension. So, a structure that mimics chunk of a large high-rise building brought into the gallery space, reflecting its surroundings, is in fact a stacking of horizontal landscape of the city of Lahore, houses on the facades of documented for a period of 2-3 years, and they were brought together to create this illusion of verticality, the present-day paradise. But it's the paradise that we all see within this world. The title refers to the paradise that we all seek in this world, but the sheer economic unevenness is something that often leads to some of the conflicts, and when we talk about incidents like 9/11, often religion is blamed for, as we discussed, as a reason, but it's the sheer unevenness, economic unevenness that perhaps more to answer for. So I will show you very quickly, because I don't think we have the time to go through all the slides with the commentary. I'll share with you some of my works just to be able to share with you the kind of format and choices of medium and stylistic choices that my practice has gone through, or rather unfolded in a way that it was also a surprise for me. I was trained as a painter at NCA, but I remained open to possibilities of what surroundings had to offer, and as we have seen in last 2 decades or so, we have gone through a major shift from analog to digital, and it has changed the way we practice art, even the way we live our lives. So art should not be any exception. So I embraced tools of technology to create, to express myself creatively, and it resulted in, for instance, this is my studio in 1992 in Boston, and this is a few years later. This is how we used to take our notes, and that's how we do it now. So it just makes me realize more and more what my generation is referred as these days, Generation X, more changes that any other generation in the past has gone through and still going through. So that is something which we could also discuss as part of our discussion today. But in the late 90s, I was greatly inspired by what our surroundings had to offer, such as poster seller shop. It's not the museums, it's not the high culture, it's the curbside poster seller shop where you can find Mona Lisa, Impressionism, Bollywood, Hollywood, all in one place. And then it's just a beginning of an indication of the age of images that we were entering at that time. And now, when we say it's an age of images, it's really an understatement. It's incredible the amount of images that we consume these days. So very early on in my career, in the late 90s and early 2000s, I assumed the role of somebody who's an editor of images. I thought that the absolute originality is there's no such thing as absolute originality. And the moment I had that belief or revelation, it perhaps have produced most innovative works of mine by bringing images together in such a way that they form new meanings and new associations. So there was no obsession to create original images from scratch. So it led to works like I Love Miniatures, which is invites the audience from within Pakistan and outside Pakistan to relate to something that they was very well received in the 90s, the new miniature.
and up close they see billboards from Lahore, something that existed in the visual culture in our surroundings at that time. So this duality and this documentation of contradictions and parallel realities and paradoxes became my pursuit for the next few years through the series called Mosaic series, Photo Mosaic series, in which many of you might have seen this work, Red Carpet series, which comprises of images of slaughterhouse in Lahore. It is 2007, so the context is also, related to some extent to war on terrorism. And this engagement with the micro and macro evolved into transliteration series, where I stopped using micro images but instead fragmented an existing image from any time and any place and recreated it, restructured it as an image from another time, another place, or to at least evoke the sensibility. So it's like an act of visual transliteration in a way, and then see how we find similarities across time and regions as opposed to differences. And photo sculptures, collaborations with people like Wayne McGregor for the Royal Opera House, London, and the works like which become art referential almost, where the idea of exhibiting art becomes a subject for art. So this is a recreation of a room from Tate Modern in a gallery in Abu Dhabi, where everything is photographically dislocated. So with the exception of what you see, the lights inside the room, everything else, and then the viewer of course on the floor, everything else is a photographic illusion. And then coming to 2015, where I was, the world evolved such that audience itself became the world, where Venice and Lahore were connected, and people would enter on walk-in basis and find, it's like waking up one morning in the mirror finding somebody else there. So because the two contexts, the physical context, were mirrored, it's just the audience which was different, which they initially imagined that somebody is hiding behind, or not knowing and discovering a little later that it's somebody on the other continent. So then people found different ways of engaging with each other. So the sheer presence of the audience became the art itself. And on that note, we have seen so many examples in the recent times where art has, is really diversified now, and increasingly becoming unrecognizable as to what we have historically thought of art may look like. So, which raises the question about the future of art, or the fate of art, if it has already not died. So, how it's going to evolve into another creature, or maybe it just proved to be a condition of history. I personally believe it's a condition of history, especially art with a capital A. Of course, creative practices, image making, visual production has always existed and will always exist till we have these senses working. But the very idea of art with capital A is not a, it's a very short, it has a short history. It's only 150 years or so. So one wonders, when the larger economic political reality evolves, which explains the current condition of what we call art, how it is going to evolve into another kind of practice. We are already witnessing, because of the internet and social media, which democratizes these practices and the tools of dissemination, and just liberates you from the paraphernalia of the structure of the post-war capitalist defined arts market that exists. It is already challenging that. So we are going through very exciting times, but as well as very challenging times. Things are changing so fast. It's so difficult to make sense of how things are evolving, and especially it becomes complicated for people like us in the global south, with simultaneity plays another role, where we live 13th and 17th and 21st centuries all at the same time. So, parallel to my art practice for the last 10-12 years, I've let my mind go wherever it goes. I mean, I'm introduced as an artist, I do the same. It is helpful for my branding. But in my head, when I'm thinking or working, I don't carry these labels. There are ideas and I let my mind go into those ideas. So I've been thinking of some ideas which were not necessarily so-called art ideas, business ideas, for instance. So and one of the ideas enticed me to think of another idea which I felt would not be able to do justice in a gallery context by creating an art object. In fact, if I run a certain business like a grocery store in a certain way, this might be a better way of communicating, may serve as a better vehicle for that creative expression. So that whole thought led to discussing that, opening a discussion with a few like-minded friends of mine, and we arrived to this manifesto, a subversive idea of manifesto, because manifesto is more like a cult, so we cannot say a manifesto possibility 01, which sounds like an one iteration. So it's basically an invitation to open a discussion as to whether the creative expression can exist in life itself, because art, not with a capital A, with a small a, art as in the arts of cave tribes until now. There's one thing in common, that all art mimics, as you know, in the words of Aristotle, all art mimics life. So whether it's acting, painting, dancing, video, music, film, it's all drawing, it's all mimicking of life, and then it also carries poetry. The structure of form has changed, and that makes it out of the ordinary and what we call art. But what if the poetics manifests itself in the life, manifest in the life itself? Architecture already does that. So what if the other actions and activities of everyday, different actions, transactions, interventions, mediations, if they start possessing some sort of poetics, while the immediate function remains what its function is supposed to serve, but through the strength of expression, if it can fall in the discourse or the discussion of creative expression. So I think that I feel is a very valid question. Many colleagues, individuals are already taking that question or dealing with that question with something what is called as relational aesthetics. So often I face this question when I talk about this, that why do you have to have this discourse with this separate title and label, whereas this discussion already exists in the discourse of art. So I feel that then in the case of relational aesthetics, the art, the institution of art still exists, because the validity and validation is still required from that institution. So whereas I feel that perhaps the discussion of creative expression can be free from the discipline of art. It can perhaps reside elsewhere as well, or at least we can give it a try. So this was the whole agenda of the initiative called Earth, a manifesto of possibilities. And thanks to Al-Noor and Manchester International Festival, these ideas have been cooking and been working on it for a while now. But it's only 2 years back when it was presented for the first time anywhere. So it was Manchester. And this I'm just going to show, we don't have the time to talk in length. Maybe there might be a separate session in coming weeks as part of another festival where I will be just focusing on art and the three concepts that I used to illustrate the idea in that presentation in Manchester. I'll be talking in depth. So I'll just show you images over here. This is the grocery store which we actually created in Manchester. It was run as an actual business. So which basically this concept of a store does without the baggage of 20th century, which is advertisement primarily in this case, and where possibly while remaining within the system larger reality of capitalism, we can have a situation where it's a win-win for everyone. That's the kind of utopian aspiration the store had, and then they proposed an ideas. I'm just showing you an image from one of them. It was a DIY housing development idea for micro cities worldwide, and there was another third concept that I presented for a new social media platform called 1001 Minds. So maybe another day we can talk about it, but all these ideas are also connected to what I am able to discuss or contribute with the help and consultation with my colleagues at Deakin House National University, we have recently started a new program called BA Honors IDA. IDA stands for Interdisciplinary Expanded Design and Arts. So the work, the program is basic. Students can design their own program, and the assumption is that they would take courses from disciplines other than art and design, and by building that knowledge, they can expand the notion of what art and design can be. But basically, we're leaving the person open-ended how the notion of disciplinarity is going to evolve in the next few years. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Rashid. Now that we have actually overshot our time, I'm going to invite three of our panelists, and I'm going to request everyone to come and just sit up on stage so that we don't let more time pass, because we then have to leave. So first of all, please would you, Rashid and Nurjahan, come up over here, and in the meantime, would Dr. Nazar Khan also come up to the stage, and Professor Ali Raza and Professor Farida Batul. Please would you come here? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce them as they come up and sit. Three people have been already introduced. I'll start with Nazra. Maybe have another chair.
I'm fine. I don't understand.
Okay, sure. All right. So, Dr. Nazra Khan is teaching art and history at LUMS. And since they are our hosts, it is really my very great pleasure to have Nazra, who is a very serious academic with many publications, and she essentially focuses on Sikh art and architecture, and she also teaches the history of Mughal art, Mughal architecture, and so thank you for being part of this panel. Dr. Farida Batul is from the National College of Arts. She is an artist, but she is also the head of the Department of Cultural Studies at the National College of Arts. And the Cultural Studies Department is a relatively new department with an undergraduate program in Cultural Studies, and I'd like very much for her to talk about some of her strategies and interests in the light of the kind of conversations that have taken place just now through the presentations. Then we have Professor Ali Raza, who is an artist, also a class fellow of Rashid Rana's, has taught all over the world, taught in the United States of America, has taught at the National College of Arts, taught for many years at Deakin House National University, and is now teaching art and design and media studies in a new department, which is at the Lahore School of Economics. So what I would like Ali to do is to talk about what his aspirations are and why it is so important that in a school that is a purely school of social sciences, that media, art and design is being taught. And I think that because of shortage of time, I'm not going to ask individual questions, but maybe I would like to start with you, Ali, and for you to tell us what kind of pedagogical objectives, aims that you have, and how can you inform us about what is going on in an institution such as LSE.
Great. Thank you, Reggie, for inviting in this panel. And also, thank you, ADA, for providing us the opportunity to sit together and discuss certain ideas. I mean, maybe 10 years back, or maybe before that, I could never even imagine teaching or discussing art in School of Economics. And also, like still people ask me, what are you doing there? I said, this is why I'm here. Because art, as Rashid put it very well, I mean, art is beyond boundaries and disciplines. And I mean, we, as a human being, we started the journey starting from human nature. Really, I realized with the progress, the human progress that we have achieved so far, progress, that we have forgotten the very basic lesson from the nature is that it's all about connectivity. Nature has like these infinite connections. And I think I see a university or college as a kind of like, it should be like introduced to students like a circuit board, where they can actually connect ideas, they can connect different sort of like parts of like the resources and create their own sort of brain. And I mean, at Lahore School of Economics, I think it's a slowly, this realization that there was a Department of Media Studies which was actually offering courses in journalism, film studies, and a little bit of like, discussion on art as well. So, but slowly they realized that the idea of creativity is so crucial in present time, because we are talking about students who are actually coming with a lot of creative gadgets and apps, right? In this time, there's so much accessibility to technology, and people are making films, people are designing, people are making art. There's so much visual culture as well. So the transformation that took place around like 80s, where we actually switched from textual sort of inhalation to visual sort of experiences. I think it's very crucial that we should take visual literacy or visual reading, same as once we used to consider literacy, like reading or learning language, it was so crucial. So it should be equal or maybe more. And similarly, creativity is so important. So I think my initial experience, I'll be just short, I just conclude this whole thing. School of Economics, students coming from business administration, from economics, social sciences, I asked them this question, why did you not ever take art? They said, because we wanted to take art, but our parents think that they will not make money here. And so I said, okay, so after taking this course or some lessons, what do you think of this? They said, it's so, we think it should be regularly taught in all the departments. The reason, because art provides multiplicity of thinking and answers, rather than sort of limited views. And also, I mean, in my own sort of class, I have noticed when people are presenting their ideas, people who have no background and never taken art, I noticed that they get so emotional talking about their art and ideas. And it's like that human touch, that realization that who they are, who they, how they can express. That's something is so fulfilling for me. It's like I feel like I feel like I'm the art missionary in a dislocated sort of remote area. But it's so far it's been very interesting, very organic, very historic. We haven't been not in a rush to create another sort of established sort of program or something. We're slowly growing with the need. So I think I'll stop.
Can you pass this on?
Just want quickly want to say something. We earlier spoke about Expo. The person who actually made it happen is now just trying the audience and looks up.
Just keep it, Nanda. I'd like you to go next and really asking you the same question of how does the discipline of art history, the experience of teaching about art and design, all the cultural aspects of it and the historical significance of it, how does that shape your own curriculum? We know about the work that you do as an academic, but as a teacher, and what are your real objectives by locating certain programs within the LUMS journey?
First of all, Assalamu alaikum to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at this star-spangled event. All three sessions have been speaking to something which are all three dimensions of art are very close to my heart. I'm an art and architectural historian. I started my academic journey as a graphic designer and then kind of morphed into art history. I work on Mughal and Sikh periods, but also other South Asian, but academically Mughal and Sikh periods. And I've been teaching at LUMS for more than 13 years now. And of course, as Ali has just shared, LUMS does not have an art history major, not even a minor so far. So I'm situated within the history department teaching art history to students who come from, some of them are taking physics as their major, or law, or business studies, or economics and political science and whatnot. My job here is to develop a sensitivity to reconnect with their environment. Our environment is all filled with art and architectural practices and aesthetic values. It is the vocabulary that we do not usually generally have to be able to have a conversation with these understood to be inanimate objects that have a life of their own. And as every sort of life in this universe has cycles. They're born, they grow up, then they shed their pristine years and then go off into obscurity. I think through my art history teaching, I encourage my students to engage in conversations with them, to look at different periods of their lives, their afterlives, and what they have to say. What kind of narratives do they have? And I'm happy to report that I've had a lot of student conversions into art history. One of my students is working with Farida. She was an econ Paul major. She started taking, she took one art history course, then another one, then she did her senior project, and then she finally decided to pursue art history for her master's, and now she's doing her PhD. And similarly, and it's a very fulfilling experience. Sometimes I feel that it's sad not to have art history majors, or not to have graduate students or PhD students. But then the kind of self-reliant duty of sensitizing these young men and women who go off and serve into a wide variety of areas within Pakistan, outside Pakistan, to be able to understand what the kind of agency art has in their lives and in other people's lives. Because art, I feel, has the ability to connect people. And that connection has been lost over time. And the ability to pick up pieces and make up a story that used to say something to people when it was made, and it still is able to convey the same thing. I saw a lot of images in the pavilion. One of that panels is in the Sheesh Mahal, Lahore Fort, from Mahabharata. How many people that go to the Sheesh Mahal are able to pick up that story and to understand what is being said? Who was it said for? For whom was it functioning as a source of inspiration? Done during Ranjit Singh's period. With the rise of seven Pandava brothers and the 100 Kauravas, what is being done there. So these are the elements that have gone missing in our society that is essentially important for us to be able to teach our students to pick those up and be able to relate to them, to be able to learn their lessons and to be able to pass them on to posterity. So this is what I do a tiny little bit. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Farida, yes. Now, you actually, in a way, wear two hats because you're a practicing artist and you're also an academic who is actually running a program of cultural study at the National College of Arts. So I think in the light of what we've been talking about, what would you like to say? Because you're really, actually apart from you and Rashid, both of you are from within art schools, whereas Nadra and Ali Raza are not from the art school environment. What would you like to tell us?
Penguin in desert.
Sorry?
Is it a great event?
Thank you, Nadesh. Thank you for inviting me to this great panel. I was listening to all three presentations, and I could see the reason why I wanted to initiate Cultural Study Department and the undergraduate program, precisely because of the reasons. What they are talking about in their three presentations, like it's all about diaspora, it's the global culture, all these representations, identity issues, knowing our culture, our heritage. Are they really hidden treasures, or we really don't want to know about it and they are right in front of us? So it was a very different kind of journey because from the rest of the educators here, because it was already an art institution. So we did not have to struggle for creating that sensitivity for understanding medium, visual, or art and design. But the challenge was to bring some kind of critical ability and analytical ability to address our relationship with our immediate surroundings, our environment, everyday life. How do we read them and how do we respond to them in terms of new technologies, migrations, travel, all of that. So it is very important to make use of the ideal location of NCA in that area of Lahore, which makes Lahore Lahore. And what is happening to that, and how to embrace our heritage, our culture, development, urbanization, to the extent where we are just following without thinking sometimes, or we are just following the aspirations or influences in the global markets. So to just take a pause and think and deliberate, that is something which we are really aiming to teach in our undergrad as well as our postgrad programs. And also we are also interested in looking at some kind of challenging ideas like research methods, using more of visual research methods. How can we incorporate indigenous knowledge? That's very important. Like one of our students is really interested in traveling by the river Ravi, and he's collecting stories. And in that process, he was also detained by the rangers because he was too close to the water. For him, doing his master MPhil by being connected with the land, the sand, the river, water, air, pollution, and the water. So it was so important, these performances and his. So that, as well as bringing knowledge in Punjabi language, for instance. Like he's not writing it in English, he's struggling. So he's creating his own methods and he's bringing that kind of knowledge, and then this whole idea of translation, transliteration. So these are the things which we are now opening up and asking our students to bring their own, methods and broaden the field, like Rashid was talking about, students designing their own fields and their career path. So here in our department, that has been asked the students, how can they bring their own or new ideas and new ways of looking and connecting the new technology and the old tradition, our old knowledge or our existing tradition. So these are things which have been part of our concerns when we are using a lot of strategies. And in terms of, I said about being an artist and how do I see that. So this time when we had a thesis, so 30% of our projects are display based and the 70% is theoretical. So some students said that it looks more like, very activist cultural studies program. So this is how I see it, the people and students here, they have developed this activist approach towards questioning and challenging old ideas.
So of course that is one of the great objectives of us as educators, to subvert the system, to ask those awkward questions, to introduce new ideas. I would like to go back to the first presentation, and that is Al-Noor. Before that, I'd just like to say that in the context of the ADA Awards, this time round, what we did was that all the previous categorization, actually we consciously changed those categories. And I think that it has worked very well in terms of the concept of where artists are not just in a printmaking category or in a painting category, but there is the blurring of all these boundaries. And so it was a deliberate effort, and I think that the people who actually applied for the award were more comfortable with what they were doing. What do you think, Al-Noor, because you were one of the jurors?
Well, I was really impressed with the whole idea of the ADA award from the outset. And I think it was really great to have two other colleagues, Fakar Dabi and Shirin Gandhi, to bring their own different perspectives in terms of how we selected. And you quite rightly said that we were able to select the artists very quickly because of, I guess because of our own backgrounds. I'm an artist and I'm a curator and now an academic. And it's about, this is incredibly knowledgeable and also, I mean from Pakistan as well, so she brought all those ideas to the forefront, and Shirin Gandhi as well runs a commercial gallery that came out in Bombay. So I think it was great for us to do this, and I hope this continues.
Well, I'm sure it will continue. I'd like to, very quickly, because we've really run out of time now, I'd like to ask Nadra to respond to Noor Jahan and Rashid's presentations.
Well, they were fabulous. How else would I respond to them? They're already responding to all elements that they were meant to cater to, and they were presented beautifully well. They showcased the pavilion absolutely fantastically. They've given us a glimpse. I did not get a chance of going there, but I was a tiny little part of the process itself where, they were working on the Sheesh Mahal, and I worked on the Sheesh Mahal and published articles, and I continue to do that, and I continue to teach my students about the visual vocabulary that the Sheesh Mahal has, and how this is perceived as a Mughal monument, the embellishment to be Mughal, while it is very Sikh. And I've also come across, British period colonial narratives of how vulgar it is as compared to the ceiling, which they kind of thought was Mughal itself, and kind of again activism in the sense drawing people's attention to look at art for what it offers, not go into comparisons and then use derogatory terms into highlighting one and dismissing the other. This is what my own research does, and this is something that I'm really happy that the pavilion also took this on and took it forward. And the kind of response then, how inclusive then art becomes. Because art has the tendency of pulling down, dismissing boundaries, of making people come together. This is, I think, all of us, as teachers, this is what we do. We look at an object, we draw attention of our students to not only the material, but the hands that have crafted this. And all of a sudden, time lapses and you go back to that craftsman or that artist who's creating this. You stand in his or her shoes and then start looking at the universe around it. Again, using the same metaphor of different lives that these objects have taken. So again, this is wonderful work that has been showcased here. This is a moment of pride for the Gurmani Centre for Languages and Literature, where I serve as the director. And I'm really happy to, grateful to Maria to have approached me and have asked to bring this session to LUMS, where we're already trying to open our doors to, and we've already done that. There is another exhibition coming up. Fatma is the curator of Sabah Qizilbash, who will be opening this on the 23rd of February here at LUMS on the corridors. Razab is here. I've asked him time and again. We do not have a gallery space, and he's promised, if I can say, of solving this problem, hopefully in the near future. So yes, so LUMS is the place for art activities now and for the future with everyone's support. And thank you, Nati, for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. It has been very, very interesting talking to all of you. There are quite many, we could go on talking forever, but we have to stop now. And thank you, Maria, very much.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.